In 1989, Martini Rosso, the well-known alcoholic beverage, ran an advertising campaign. And in the advertisement, in the background, they had placed the Roberts R200. Many people, having seen this advertisement, remembered the R200 set that they'd had many years ago. And obviously, it rekindled happy memories maybe of listening to pop shows, whatever, during the 1960s, which, let's face it, it was a good era for music. So these people started to look around for the radio, and many had contacted Roberts, asking them if they can still buy one. Well, obviously they couldn't, because the radio had been discontinued in the mid-1960s. So Roberts, not wanting to miss out on a golden opportunity, contacted a case manufacturing company in Suffolk, and using a circuit from a current model in their series, the Roberts R717, putting the two together, making it look very much like the original R200, and putting it onto the market as a Roberts revival. So the two radios you see in front of you are very early sets, and I have one model which is in the 2000s serial number, but these radios were manufactured in a batch of 3,500, I believe, the first batch, as they tested the market. But they soon sold very quickly, so Roberts did more batches of these radios. Originally they were in red, but later on they introduced other colours, and there's a green one in front of you, and I also have a maroon set. So we'll be looking at these radios in the video as we look at the history, because we're now celebrating basically 70 years of this iconic design. And Harry Roberts had based it on his wife's handbag, introducing what was then called the Roberts R55 in 1954. And apparently it said that he'd copied the design of a handbag his wife had had. And that design has basically carried on through all these decades, and you can still currently buy a radio with the very same design, now with internet and DAB technology. It's hard to believe, really. So in my video, I will be celebrating these iconic radios, looking at the history and looking at sets in my collection, taking us through the timeline from the R55 up until we get to the Roberts revivals you see here, and on beyond into the new models that Roberts currently make. So sit back and relax, and please stay with me as I bring you a little bit of history of what is truly an iconic radio design. Okay, just before we go on to look at some of my earlier sets, I will just like to point out a few features of the early revival sets, so that you're able to spot one if you wish to purchase one for your own collection. Originally, they were only made in red. It is said that a batch of 500 Roberts revival radios were made. Roberts had the wooden cases for the revival made by a company, A.E. Kevin Limited, of Haverhill in Suffolk. Roberts used the actual radio circuit used for these radios was a circuit taken from the Roberts catalogue, and it was used in the Roberts R717. So basically it's the same radio as this R717, cased in a wooden handmade case with a leather cloth covering, which give it much more of a premium feel, and much better than a lot of the plastic sets that were available on the market, bland and boring. Looking inside the set, a clever feature of these Roberts revivals is that the back hinges, clips from the clasp at the side and hinges open, which makes it very easy to gain access to the radio circuit itself and for battery changes. But as I previously mentioned, as you can see on the circuit board here, although it is upside down, you will see the R717, clearly identifying this as a circuit from the R717 radio. The other feature that we need to look out for is the actual label with the serial number. On the earlier sets, it was just a plain simple paper label, and as you can see on here, this is serial number 2214, which would put it in the first batch that were manufactured in the first few months, where Roberts on their website state that they initially sold 3,500 radios in the first few months. I am told that this paper label on the very, very early sets was placed at the bottom of the radio here under the circuit board, so something else to look out for. And as we can see here is the little wooden turntable which was used to direct the radio, to spin the radio around to get a better reception on AM signals, long wave and medium wave. And this is another feature that you need to look out for if you wish a very, very early set, because I'm told this only appeared on the very first few thousand radios. I do have a later set which only has 4 little pegs, wooden rubber pegs that the radio sits on, and you can't spin it round. You have to pick it up and lift it round. So there are a few. Oh, before I go, the other thing to look out for is the knobs. The knobs on the early radios are made of aluminium, and then they were sprayed white. It's not easy to identify. Obviously, it's colder to touch by hand on a cold day. But if you're looking on the internet and you wanted to purchase one, it's not clear. Some of them, the actual paint's worn off and you can see the aluminium underneath. And another thing to look out for, on the tuning scale, originally they were white, and on the long wave band, if you look at where the pointer is here, there's a large oblong window by local. That is a feature of the very early sets. On the later sets, they've got the smaller windows, as you can see there. So that's the obvious thing I use when I'm looking for an early set that's been advertised online, is it has that large oblong window. So we'll now go and look at the historic sets in my collection as we work our way back up to the revival story and past the revival model we know here of the 1990s up to the current radios that are available today from Roberts, being the DAB models and the internet model. Sit back and relax and enjoy. Okay, thank you. So this is where it all began, and in front of you here you can see my Roberts R55. If we pan back, you can see the similarities between the two sets. The set on the left is a valve radio, and the set on the right is a transistor radio with an integrated circuit. And when we look at them from the front, we can see the grille shape's very similar. You can see the early type enamel Roberts badge and the scripted badge which came out on the RT1s in 1958. Slightly different design, but basically it's the same badge. So we'll now power up this set. It's originally it was made as a battery only set, the R55, and it wasn't until the R66 came in that you could actually plug it into the mains. But these were portable radios, and Robert's slogan was the finest of all portables. I think I agree with that, but that's my view. Okay, so I'll switch the set on and we'll have a little listen to what sort of sounds we would expect in 1954.
Brand partnerships and cash prizes like this, so I think it'd be absolutely amazing if obviously we was to be able to be rewarded with that, because it can then set us up for what's next in our sport.
You know, I'm going to ask you.
Not able to pick up Russian radio wave anymore.
For the rest of our lives. This smoking costs £17 billion each year, against bringing in £10 billion in terms of tax revenue. So it's costing us more money. And I would say, as a government and as politicians.
So this is a valve set, miniature valves, and to operate the radio, valves are power hungry really, so they have 2 batteries originally which are no longer available, and one was a 90 volt battery and the other one was a 1.5 volt battery. And to operate this set I've got a battery converter which provides the necessary voltages to run the radio.
It's used as a smoking cessation tool, and it has been very successful. successful.
And as you can see here,
people smoking.
this is Roberts Type R55, serial number 3142, which again makes it an early radio in the production run, and clearly identifies it as being born in 1954. We now move on to the next radio in my collection, which is a very fine R66, which, as you can see in here, is very original and in excellent condition, even having the original leather strap. Most of these radios, these straps are long vanished, as had happened in my previous R55. Again, you can see the similarities in design. Basically, it's the same design as the R55, but it's now upgraded to a mains battery radio. And with this set, I've even got the original brochure, which if you'd like to pause, you can read that. And the instruction pack with the radio instructions. So this radio was a mains battery, and I have a replica battery set in the radio, but the batteries have run low, so we'll switch it on and just have a quick listen, but it'll probably fade away quite soon.
I think was very important, and you know, given Britain was already in the region and supporting.
Want the likes of Mbappe, Tchouameni, Camavinga. They want them involved. I mean, is this an Olympic sport?
Well, I mean, would you cherish a gold medal?
No, I wouldn't.
To play for
I wouldn't
KGB at the Olympics.
Wouldn't care less to me. Most footballers would tell you the same. They might.
Look, the reality is...
Mbappe says it would be a dream to win it.
Well, that's...
We'll just spin the radio round and look inside.
No, but
And as you can see, visually it's different than the R55 we previously looked at, and we can see the reproduction replica batteries, a B126 and an AD35. And on the back here we can see the serial number, which states it's a Type R66, and the serial number is 8072. Use on AC mains only. But obviously it was a battery radio as well.
And I don't understand. Well, no, he might want to play. Fair enough. It's up to him. Everyone's individual. It will be up to him.
We now move on to a rather iconic radio in the Roberts radio history. This is the Roberts RT1. This radio was launched in April 1958, and it was Roberts' first mass-produced, commercially available transistor radio. Looking at the history of Roberts, I did notice that they manufactured a transistor radio for the Queen before they manufactured this radio. Maybe that was a test bed to see how it worked before they went into full production with the RT1. Again, you can see the similarities between the two radios. The interesting point to note on the RT1 is the Roberts script badge, where they moved from the enamel badges we saw on the R55 and R66 to a plastic sort of gold-plated script badge. And as you can see, very similar to the current badge on the Roberts rival radios of the 1990s. The other thing to note is the speaker grille, which is a stamped mesh grille. Again, very similar to the 1990s radio. On the top we have three knobs to operate the radio. We have the on-off, well, the medium wave, long wave selector, which acts as an on-off switch as well. We have the tuner to tune into the stations, and volume control.
This week it will get royal assent and becomes law. There is a question mark though about whether the Lords, the House of Lords, finally sort of throw their cards on the table, capitulate today and say we have attempted to make the amendments we wanted to this, but we can't carry on now. The supremacy of the elected House.
So we'll, like the other sets, we'll spin it round and take a look inside. As previously mentioned, to gain access to the inside of a Roberts radio, you just flick the little catch back at the side and open up, and the back is secured with a piano type hinge. Just keep that in there just to secure the battery holder. Originally there would have been a large PP8 6-volt battery at the bottom of the radio there. These are no longer available, but they operate on 6 volts and they can be easily adapted using a little adapter available on eBay and other places.
Yeah, it remains one of the big questions.
You can see inside the circuit, which now has the little transistors. I think they're Mullard
clears
transistors.
gets royal assent, when will the first
And the serial number on the back is 23976, and it's Roberts Radio Type RT1.
Away. Will there be further legal challenges, perhaps from the ECHR, possibly?
Okay, I have in front of me now my Roberts R200. This is the actual radio that featured in the Martini advertisement of 1989. And it was because of this radio that all the potential customers started to ring Roberts asking where they could get one. And the result of that, in 1990, Roberts Radio produced this, the Roberts Revival R200. Again, as you can see, they copied the design, they made it in red, and the radio is very similar in many ways. You can see the script badge is now the same as the one on this set. Like the Roberts RT1 that came before it, the radio has 3 knobs on the top, and again we can choose the bands flicking between the two. So we'll switch the set on and see what we think.
I'm sure there are very few people who don't know who at least one of them is.
100%, yeah. I mean, they weren't given the credit at the time at all. I think they were often dismissed as just kind of bubblegum pop for children. But they are still the best-selling girl group of all time, you know, nearly 30 years later.
The best league in the world. Like, you're going to lose games, Jim.
You're right. I tell you what, Jim, you're right also, because what he would have learned on Sunday, especially that second half, is who's physically okay. Because I thought for once...
Okay, we'll spin it round and have a look inside.
What we're going to see tonight, Jimmy?
A completely different design of circuit compared to my RT1. And in here we can see the transistors, which are the AF117s. Hated by many radio enthusiasts because they short out. They have like a growth on the inside the case, and the metal shorts out into the case and makes it redundant. But on this radio, it's all original and still working well. There was an earlier R200 which had the Mullard transistors inside. This is a later version. I do have an earlier set in my collection, but being the red one, I thought I'd use this for this video. Model number R200, serial number 149944. Before I move on to the next radio in this Roberts Revival history video of mine, I'll just show you a brochure, original brochure for the Roberts R200. If you'd like to read that, just pause the video and be able to read what it says. But again, we have a lovely red Roberts R200. As you can see here, Roberts did provide a case for these radios, and all of the cases looking tired. My R200 in red did come with the original case, which has protected the radio through its life. After the original batch runs of the early Revival sets that Roberts made, here you can see I have one in green, one in maroon, and the red one that's been featuring in my video. And the little point I made about the little window in the tuning scale, which is oblong, indicates these are early sets. And the other thing I mentioned was the knobs on the radio are aluminium. On this one, being in fairly poor condition and well used, you can see the paint's worn away and you can see the aluminium underneath. So after a few batch runs of these early sets, it would have seemed that Roberts became confident that there was a great demand for these radios, and they decided to manufacture them en masse. And they later came out with what was then known as the Roberts R250. And we will look at one of those sets now. So this radio is a Roberts model R250. And this is quite a special radio because it was a limited edition and the radio was actually made with a leather covering rather than the Rexine type covering. You can now clearly see that they changed the tuning scale to gold, and the elongated long window on the long wave band to the right is now shrunk to the same size as all the other windows. We have the popular Robert script badge and the metal grille and a little label made in leather to indicate that this is the special leather edition. This radio comes complete in its original box, instructions and packing. Quite a special item. Another difference in these sets, unlike the earlier sets where the on-off switch was a press button on the top, the later R250 model moved the on-off switch to the left control
An
knob.
expert walkthrough of your new car when it's delivered. And a VAT-free 14-day money-back guarantee. Hardly surprising Cinch is rated excellent on Trustpilot. So join the nation in absolutely cinching it. Search Cinch and buy your next car today. Returns subject to mileage restrictions, T's and C's.
Nice bar now.
We've got no closure. We don't know if that is my brother, and I don't know where my dad is. It's a real overwhelming feeling, like my heart sinks. Beg me not to let no one bury him. Beg me to make sure that I keep him with him. Do you know, like, he stays with me.
Prices may vary in little Waitrose, Channel Islands and concessions.
Again, we had long wave and medium wave on these radios.
I think there are better sides in the competition. And I think certainly if Man City overcome Real Madrid, which I think they will, then I don't see Bayern Munich overcoming Man City if they're able to get to a game with Man City.
You will notice a difference when we open this radio,
More chance against Madrid than City. I think that they will get.
as
We will end up trophyless this
Roberts put a panel on the back to hide all the circuitry.
next season. Well, it also does his contribution to the side is unarguable.
And we have a much more elaborate sticker
He scored X amount
with the
of
serial
goals for
number,
Bayern Munich.
and the model number, as you can
there's no
clearly
doubt
see now, is
that
marked as
he's made
R250.
He didn't just
They're
make
still
the
very
choice
proud of the
to go
fact
to
it's
Bayern
made in
Munich
Great
because he knew
Britain
it
by
was
Roberts
part of the
Radio
deal that
Limited.
Tottenham were prepared to do with a club that was prepared to pay the money that Daniel Levy was prepared to accept. So all of those things came into play. Yeah. And of course it had
Before we move on to the DAB sets, just a little thing to mention here. If you want an analog radio, an analog revival set, up until very recently, Roberts produced this, which is known as the RD260. And in many ways, it's a fantastic upgrade on this radio here. Again, we're back to push button to turn it on and off.
It's not known how many Africans he captured, but he faced regular attacks.
And it's hard to see in this light, but the actual tuning scale is illuminated.
By the late 1860s, he was leading large expeditions of around 4,000 men and had amassed vast quantities of ivory. This gave him considerable power and authority over many villages across territories in East and Central Africa.
The back of this radio still hinges out, but the hinge has been moved to the other side.
Ivory and slave trade proliferated in areas
And it looks very much
political
a completely different
and
set
where
inside. You
power
can't
was
see the
decentralized.
circuitry.
And Tipu Tib's access to firearms
This
allowed
radio
him
is
to
powered by
exploit
four
such
D-type
environments to the
1.5
full.
volt batteries.
During this time, he came
And
across
you can
an
see the sticker
Englishman,
here,
as he noted in his
marking the model
autobiography,
number.
a big fellow by the name of Livingston.
And the barcode is
His
serial
first
number.
name, David. He and the 10 members of his party had almost been killed. And
But if you're looking for a radio, if you love the Roberts Revival radio set range, and you want an analog radio, you don't want DAB, this is the one to buy.
The idea that Europeans...
It was around 2005 that Roberts moved the Revival radios into the DAB era. And I think the first set was the RD50. In front of you here is my Roberts RD60, which is a DAB radio. This is one of the last in the line of the RD60s before they moved on to the RD70. The earlier radios had covering which was softer in feel, but it was also very vulnerable to getting damaged, and they would peel, easily marked. So Roberts did upgrade the covering on the latter RD60s and then continued with the same covering on all the sets that are currently available, the RD70 and the iStream 3s. They also made special editions. This one is in piano black, gloss black. Very nice looking set. And also they made models in various fabrics, designer fabrics. Very chintzy. And each model is down to your particular taste. So switching on a DAB set, it's operated by an on and off button on the top panel here. There's a slight delay as the radio boots up. But you can see on there we've now got the station and the radio signal quality.
Are you hiding, Emily? If it's a game, I give up. I'm here. Where? You gave me a shock. Your head poking through the ceiling. Oh, thank goodness you're here, Hilda. The ladder fell down. I could have been up here for days. You hear about old people.
Looking at the back of the set, we can see the batteries and very little else. Just a lot of plastic and a large speaker.
Come up, Hilda.
And on the back cover, we can see the model number. Now the RD60 was the last revival, apart from the R260, which I've previously just shown you, the analogue one, to have the hinge back where you could easily access the radio. The later RD70s and the iStream 3s are a solid case, you can't access them from the back, and I presume you'd have to pull all the internals out from underneath.
Choice of George's. He's been married 10 years.
So this is the last hinge back radio dating back from the radio we started off with, the R55 in 1954. We now arrive in my little video in the timeline history of the Roberts Revival set at the current model. This is the Roberts RD70 and it's still available from Roberts today. Again, it's a digital radio, but it's vastly improved in sound quality than the original 1990 Revival set. So this radio has a colour display.
Impact more generally on things like the control of pests and diseases in the farm landscape. You know, not just for the cropping sector, but the arable sector as well. You know, even around Christmas and New Year, we were seeing midges being blooded and down in the southeast of the country.
As you can now see, there's no hinge on the back, and there's no way you can access the radio from the back panel as you could do in previous sets. There's a plastic bottom, there's a battery tray here, and the power supply, which I'm currently using the radio on. And here is my Roberts Revival iStream 3, where they clearly proudly display the Revival logo by Roberts in the display panel as the radio boots up. Now this is a rather special radio in many ways, because we started this video in 1954 with the R55, our valve radio. We've travelled through time to transistors, integrated circuits and DAB, and finally we arrive at the last radio in this video, an internet radio. So we here have a radio in a wooden case with all the classic design of the Revival series, but you can actually connect this to the internet and tune into radio stations from all around the world. Quite a thing. So switch the radio on.
Fund that you refer to, Winifred, is actually, it was related specifically to the impact on a few.
These radios have a good sound quality. I'll turn it up a little bit so you can hear.
You know, it is a drop in the ocean in terms of the number of farms that are impacted across the country. And my farm is on top of a hill. We don't get flooded, but we're very, very waterlogged. Which
I'll try and find a better station to listen to that without music, hopefully.
And it's all going out.
Yeah, I hear. I'm guessing meat is part of your calculations, is it, if you're a bakery?
Absolutely. We make handmade sausage rolls and pies as part of our bakery duties. And we're not seeing a decrease in the prices. I mean, chicken breast would make your eyes water if you saw the prices we were having to pay for chicken breasts. It's,
like the RD70, the radio back isn't removable. Access to the inside of this radio would be from the bottom, and I would presume you'd have to move these rubber feet, and there's probably 6 screws to remove, and the actual radio circuitry would drop out from the bottom of the radio, unlike all the other sets where you hinged open the back to gain easy access. It runs on 6 1.5 volt AA batteries, and being a DAB or internet radio would be very power hungry and not really economical to use unless you used rechargeable batteries. So at this point we come to the end of my story on the Roberts Revival. As you can see, both sets are very similar, and the latest set is very true to the original incarnation of the Roberts Revival. I will finish off by browsing through a few brochures showing the early set and some of the later DAB sets. This is an early Roberts radio brochure, not quite sure the date, but it is an early one showing an early Revival set. You can still see that Roberts in those days was still selling TVs, or cases for TVs, TV cabinets. Some radios still had the classic 1970s design, including the R717, which is the radio internals that were used on the Revival sets. As we glance through the brochure, you can see a lot of plastic radios, which are more than likely manufactured out in the Far East somewhere and badged as Roberts. Probably designed by Roberts and manufactured abroad. But as we glance to the end of the brochure, we see Revival radio and the Roberts Revival 200. They also reintroduced another radio Roberts, the R500, known as the Revival R500. This was a larger set, but again it used the same circuitry with a bigger speaker. This is my actual R500 radio, Revival radio, a very early set in my collection, which is in working order. As seen, the same radio as seen in the brochure. And this is serial number 100919. I would think that this is radio 919 actually in the production run. And as you can see, it uses the same circuit as in the Revival series R717. Just a little look at some of the DAB Revival radios and the array of colours that were available, including the piano gloss black, which I showed in the video, and the various designer fabrics that they used to cover the radios. Just to add at the end of my video, and for a matter of interest, if anybody watching this has any early sets, I'm trying to work out the history of the serial numbers, and I have 3 in front of me, 3 red early sets. So the first one, I have serial number 3826, and this radio has a swivel base. Moving on, I have another radio with a serial number, and what's interesting with this one, it says Roberts Radio Revival 200, where the other ones just say Revival, and the serial number here is 102407. I would ascertain from this is serial number, production model would have been 24407, but this one doesn't have the swivel base, but it's an early set. And then another one to look into, which I think is the earliest one in my collection, has serial number 2214. But again, as you can see here, it's Roberts Radio Limited Model Revival. It doesn't state R200. And this one has a swivel base. So I'm just trying to work out what the history is regards to the serial numbers. And I very much appreciate, especially if somebody worked at Roberts, if they can throw more light on these, that would be great. Because I think it's such an iconic radio. It's probably the most popular British radio in existence, that carries that 1960s, 50s, you can say, traces its roots back to, of design, that you can currently still buy. I hope you enjoyed watching my little video on the history of the Roberts Revival. There's a lot to learn. There's more to learn about these radios. And if anybody has any knowledge, I would be very welcome if they pop it in the comments section below. Anybody at work for Roberts, that'd be very, I'll be very welcome to hear from those. But until my next video, I hope you enjoyed watching. And if you tune in again to Radio Win, hopefully I'll have some more videos on more radios in my collection. Until then, I say bye for now. Cheerio.